Okay, welcome guys to a Christ Healing Ministry live stream. So today what we're going to be talking about in particular is the George Floyd case. We're going to be talking about the riots and the peaceful protests. We're going to be discussing individual attacks on businesses and fires, and we're going to be especially instilling that violence has never once solved an issue. Never once has violence solved an issue. Whether it's from the cop or whether it's from a protest, if it gets to violence, it almost never solves an issue. So, today, before I announce who will be joining me, I want to introduce our quote of the day. It's from Martin Luther King, and it perfectly expresses the unity that we as a nation need to have in solidarity and support for the arrest of all of the officers involved in this. Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So now I'm going to introduce who will be joining me for today. I have... Is it 3 or 4? I think it's 4. 4 friends with me today. It's going to be me. It's going to be my friend Ryan, my friend Kelson, Chris, and a friend of mine, Connor. But for right now, it's only going to be Ryan and Kelson because Chris and Connor had to go do something. So y'all want to say hey?
Yeah, what's happening? Hey.
So let's go to the first couple of stories here. And I'll just pull up some quick pictures of the fires that have been set. They're really pixelated because they're stretched and stuff like that. But here's the first one. It's of several cars on fire with a building in the background on fire. I believe this one was from Minnesota, and I just want to stress very, very clearly that this is not justified. But while I'm stressing that, I also want to stress that nothing those police officers did was justified. I'm not saying one is justified while the other isn't. Neither of them are justified. So now I'm going to pull up another building that has been set on fire. It looks sort of like a brick building, sort of like the old school buildings. And that's just... It just sickens me that our country is to this point in its discourse. I mean, that just may be me, but that just... It makes me sad, really.
Yeah, it's crazy, bro. We ain't gonna... That ain't gonna bring us together. Setting things on fire, setting buildings on fire, people property, homes, people cars, people who ain't even involved in this, people who ain't... Like, it ain't their fault that George Floyd died. It's the 4 officers' fault. And that's not... fair for other people to have to deal with other people's madness. Like, these people, they're doing an investigation on these 4 officers. They're going to get to the bottom of it. Forget trying. They're going to have to get to the bottom of it. Because I'm sick of another person died from police brutality. So that's what's going on right now. Ain't bringing us together. That's tearing people apart. Because you got people who peacefully protesting, they getting caught in the middle of the people who violently protesting, and that's messed up.
That's the biggest issue I have with all of this violence, is the people that are peaceful about it they're being drowned out by the constant burning of buildings and cars and smashing of windows and looting. It kills the people who are actually out there to protest peacefully. And I'm going to specifically start by showing a case here, if I can get to it really quickly. Here it is. Let's go ahead and turn that off. Now it's a black screen. Turn on my display capture. And here we go. New Orleans Police Department thanks the New Orleans protesters for peaceful demonstration. It's sad whenever a police department has to thank protesters for protesting peacefully. That's just, whenever there's so much pain already here from coronavirus and all of this, that, and the other, this is not something you want to start directly in the middle of this.
Yeah.
I would like to quickly go to another case, and this was one from Flint, Michigan. And essentially what happened here was an officer saw people peacefully protesting on their knees, and he took off his helmet and he got down and he prayed with them. And he was there with the protesters, not in riot gear, although he had that next to him because they were expecting riots like the rest of the country. We have to look to areas like this. And for those in this country that are saying peaceful protest hasn't worked, you dishonor every single person from the 60s that fought for the civil rights movement. Peaceful protesting stopped Jim Crow. It can certainly
stop the bus crisis.
It can certainly it stopped so much. It can certainly stop police brutality.
And that case in Michigan, that's what we need right now. Like, if we can do that, that'll bring us so much closer. Like, just imagine if those people in Flint or New Orleans was protesting violently, then not the officer gotta get violent, and we don't need another police force in any part of this country to get violent with anybody else right now. Like, we 6 days removed from a guy just getting killed, and by 4 police officers, and they didn't even get off this man's body until the EMS people came and told him to get off of him.
And it's very sad, though, because cases like these get front page headlines, but the peaceful people don't get front page headlines. You undercut peaceful people whenever you decide to be violent. It's that simple. Your violence undercuts who they are and what they're trying to do because you think that you know best. That you know and can take on the system by burning down buildings of people who you don't even know.
Yeah.
This is another good thing, and I'm so glad that he did this. It's been so long overdue. Donald Trump recently, I would say probably, when was this written? About 23 hours ago, so about a day ago, he designated Antifa, the people who are rioting and doing this, that, and the other, he finally designated them as a terrorist organization. That is so long overdue. And why?
I mean, they fit the similarities.
And while I don't agree with everything he does, and I don't think anyone should blindly follow someone, this is something I will say I support from him. This is something that is beneficial not only to us as a society, but also, especially right now, to those who are actually facing businesses being burned down, and they're trying to protest peacefully. There was also another story. I don't think I actually have it up right now, but there was another story. It was of a couple of people from Black Lives Matter and a couple of police officers. They isolated Antifa members and started beating the shit out of them. While I don't support violence, even if it is to an Antifa member, I do understand why they did it. Antifa is the main source of attack during these protests. So I do understand that. Now, let's go ahead. Let's get into more of the meat of the discussion here. By going back to the first page, we're going to talk about the cities in which protests or riots have happened. So the first city is Atlanta, where people graffitied the CNN headquarters and smashed out windows, threw firecrackers in the building. None of that is justified. Me as a conservative, I don't even agree with all of the premise of CNN. But that doesn't matter. You can't do these things and they're never justified. Bakersfield. Oh. Shit. So this was where it says right here, 10 people are arrested and a memorial to a fallen police officer was vandalized during a protest.
Wow. Really, bro?
It says that
that's bullshit.
200 to 300 people, according to this was the amount of people that were there. Most of the arrests were resisting and obstruction, but still, there was someone that was arrested for attempted murder whenever he drove through the crowd and hit a 15-year-old girl.
Oh, jeez.
It is disgraceful, these actions. Let's continue going down the list. Boston. And realistically, Boston is one of those places where, I'll be honest, majority of it was white there for that protest, but it was generally peaceful. They're based on data from this, all it says is that hundreds of people gathered. So if you're going to take a model, take the Boston model. Take the New Orleans or Baton Rouge model, the Louisiana model, or take the Flint model. We have to have peaceful protest here. That's the only way any of our voices will be heard. Chicago is where I'm going to be talking about next, which was bad beforehand, but it just got even worse during this. Protesters marching through downtown Chicago left broken windows and toppled garbage cans and flower pots, and this was Saturday. An unknown number of arrests were made, no serious injuries, but the fact that people were smashing windows, that just... And we're not even getting into this is not the bad stuff. I mean, you saw the first couple of pictures I showed. This isn't even the bad stuff. But I want to get really quickly to one man. And this was a cop. This was an Oakland cop. Let's say his name. Patrick. Patrick was the name of this cop. He was shot to death during the protest. Him and many other people, and I will show that too, many other people are dying from this. There's no justification for murder. Whether it's from a cop or whether it's from a protester.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It's ridiculous, man.
It doesn't matter. If you murder someone, it's wrong. Kelson, any words?
Yeah, but you been quiet since you got on this damn thing.
I have been being insulted by this dumb idiot.
Oh, don't.
Leave that shit Brett alone and protecting the discussion.
Shut up.
Shut up.
Neither of y'all shut up.
I was talking about, and yeah, murder is murder.
Okay, but do you have anything to add?
Not really. I agree with everything y'all said so far.
I'm gonna quickly go into this man. He was defending his store, and he was defending his store. He had his sword out because this was in Austin. So he had his sword out. He sliced into a man's hand because a man started reaching towards him. Then a mob of people jumped on him and beat him down. They then, after he was beat down, took rocks and threw them at him. This man, the last time I heard of it, he was in critical condition. Again, it doesn't matter your race. There's no justification for shit like this. None.
I know, so people need to stop freaking talking about calling people Uncle Times and shit and saying black people need to be more upset. Everybody should be upset because that's like the cops wasn't just white. One was white, one was black, one was Asian, one was Hispanic. So like it's just it's crazy. Like it shouldn't be doing it shouldn't be happening like that.
I'm going to go back to showing, again, peaceful. Since I've shown the fire, a couple of the photos of the fires. I'm going to show more later. But I want to get back into what we should be doing. I'm going to pull up a picture now of the New Orleans...
Justin, what else you been saying?
Of the New... Alright. Of the New Orleans
what else you been saying?
Peace Assembly. This is of people that are standing, simply standing with their signs and chanting. They're on a lawn in a public park. All of them are 6 feet apart from each other. This is what we need right now. We need stuff like this. We don't need fighting from people. Whether it's justified or not. It only makes everyone look bad. I'm going to now show something from Tennessee. It's sad. It was a Tennessee courthouse that was set on fire.
Oh, damn.
This is a courthouse that was set on fire. Obviously, I'm sure everyone by this point has heard that the 3rd district or the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis was burned down as well. The entire building left to ash. These are disgraceful acts, and anyone who supports this type of behavior, let me ask you this.
Is a fucking shitbird.
But let me ask you this. You support it because it's public property or it's private business that isn't yours. But if they burn down your house with your child in it, then...
Oh, yeah, they'd be pissed in.
Then will it be an issue to you? It's only an issue to you right now because... Or it's only not an issue to you right now because they haven't done anything to you yet. And that's straight up what it is.
What goes around comes around. You reap what you sow. So shit, if it does happen to the motherfuckers, so be it.
Now I'm gonna pull up some more fires. This one was another one of a police cruiser that was set on fire. Then we go to this one, which was dumpsters lined up and all set on fire. We continue to search and look at these pictures. Now I'm going to pull up another one. This is of a wine shop that was set on fire. Why you got to do that to the wine? Wine is good. Come on.
Man, I guess so. Wine's not good, but you still don't have to burn down the damn wine shop. Shit.
What the?
Shit,
What?
bro.
Why? All of that wine going to waste, man.
Exactly.
It
Kelsey.
was old anyways.
Still though, that oil makes it good.
I guess so.
And then this one is the most noticeable one because while the fire was being set, it was still very much so noticeable. They burned a Family Dollar.
Wow.
Oh yeah, that shit burns for real, man. Man, you know how many families need that damn stuff, you piece of shit?
On top of that, and this is something that's widely known, the first couple of buildings that were burned down was an AutoZone
Oh, damn.
and what is that other one? Target. They burned down an AutoZone, a Target, a Family Dollar, a wine shop. What is the reason? You can say all you want to that they're justified in this. But
Nah,
again,
ain't justified at all.
there's no
You
justification
burned
for
down some
this.
innocent people property.
Yeah.
I'm now going to move back into the data that we have collected. So I'm going to go back. We're going to talk about Columbus. In Ohio, they were blocked for hours. About 400 protesters gathered in a standoff with the police. This was from the Columbus Dispatch. Obviously, you can read everything that I'm reading on screen now. They hurled water bottles, flares, and smoke bombs at the officers. Police fired back with pepper spray. And here's the saddest part. They actually had there was something about this in a different newspaper that I read. See? So,
What?
it's a dog. Just ignore it.
Oh, I thought that was your stomach.
So anyway, with pepper spray, this came out from another newspaper. The pepper spray caught a kid because their family brought a kid to this. They brought a kid to this protest. They were fighting police officers. And because they were fighting police officers, this kid got pepper sprayed. And then in order to put out the flames in the kid's eyes, the officers had to pour milk over the kid.
Shit.
because they didn't have anything else. That was all they had. They were hurling. They hurled all the water bottles at the police officers. There was no more water left.
But still, man, that's uncalled for.
That's disgraceful.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas.
That damn bitch, you gotta put a kid at risk.
Dallas, and this is something we've already talked about. A man beaten nearly to death for defending his store. And there was many other things. After the Dallas riots, there was a video that I was watching earlier. And it was talking about these specific events. It went into shops that had been looted, and all the windows were smashed out, etc., etc. There was a wine store in Dallas. There was a clothing store, a restaurant. Basically, anything that was worth a damn was being taken. And these weren't big name places. These weren't the AutoZones, the McDonald's, the Wendy's. These were mom and pop shops that had to stay closed for coronavirus and just were reopening. And you take that away from them. You take all of their merchandise from them. You break their windows. You literally are starving your own people at this point. Whether you're black or white. You are letting your people starve. In Fort Worth, it was mostly peaceful with a little bit of violence thrown in here or there. But in Dallas, it was awful. Des Moines, violent melee spread throughout the city, is what it said here. Protesters threw bricks and rocks at police cars. Businesses on at least one section of the city boarded up their windows in advance for the planned demonstration. It was planned. Windows in the federal courthouse were a hotel and a tire service business. Police reportedly fired chemical irritants to disperse the crowd. Protesters organized and said they planned 1 hour assembly was peaceful and that they encouraged people to go home after. Another group incited the violence, and it happened hours later, is what they said. There were many people.
Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
There were many people during this protest that had to be treated by police officers and protesters alike because they had chemical irritants in their eyes, their nose, their mouth, their anus.
Shit.
Oh, gosh.
Alright, now what was you going to say before, Ryan?
I said, what you think would have happened if they would have let a bull rush them?
I think that would have been amazing to see. I don't remember if I actually had it pulled up here, but a bunch of dudes, a bunch of people, a bunch of protesters or rioters. Well, these weren't rioters. These were just people standing in the street being stupid. There were like 1,000 people standing in the street, and an 18-wheeler was driving through there. Well,
oh yeah, guess and tell me about that.
Yeah, they didn't. He just ran them over. Just
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Slammed the shit out of these protesters. And what I'm saying here is, you can protest without getting in the road. You can protest without burning buildings, without looting. And it's worked wonderfully before. It can work now. Don't listen to these leaders in your communities. Don't listen to these people that say you need to fight like this. You don't need to fight dirty. In Denver, protesters set fire to trash cans and dumpsters, smashed windows at the Colorado Judicial Center, and many other buildings. They threw water bottles and other items at police. Officers responded. Keep that in mind. For all those people who are saying the officers did it first, and we've had a couple of people, me and Kelson, that said that. I'm sure you would concur with that, Kelson.
I hate ignorant black people.
I hate ignorant people.
I hate ignorant people, period.
Exactly. Officers responded with tear gas, pepper bullets. Oh, they peppered bullets. I didn't know they had those. And they fired them into the crowd.
I'll tell you, but I need to let one good big ass bull run through the motherfuckers. They'll quit then. It's one big ass bull.
In Detroit, people were arrested when demonstrations of about 1,500 turned violent. This is 1,500 people.
You're messed up,
bro. And these are violent in nature. If you want love, you have to reciprocate it. If you want peace, you have to be the change that you want to see. If you want hatred and deception, evil and destruction, then that's what this is going to cause.
The world ain't going to change till we change ourselves.
In Floyd's native city, which is Houston, protesters threw rocks and bottles at one and hosed officers with a fire extinguisher.
It's a shame, bro.
Just awful. In Los Angeles, 5 police officers were injured and more than 400 people were arrested. 5 police officers were injured. Keep in mind, these police officers had riot gear on, and they were still injured. And anyone who calls this justified
is a shitbird.
This is what you're calling justified. The pictures that I showed you, that's what you're calling justified. Now, I will repeat it again because apparently people can't hear me. I've said it over and over again over the last 3, 4, 5 days. If you protest and you're peaceful, like they did in Michigan with the officer that took off his riot gear and was with them. The other officers that went outside of the courthouse and took a knee and prayed with these protesters. The people in New Orleans and Baton Rouge who aren't burning down businesses, who are sitting there and standing there with bullhorns and just talking. If you are these people, I support you with all my might. If you are these people that I'm showing you in these photos, I don't support you. Fuck you.
What a big dick.
Right in your ass. Demonstrators, okay, so Louisville, they were protesting both Breonna Taylor, that's a whole different story, and...
I mean, different story, but same outcome.
yeah.
Same reason.
As hunter gatherers, multiple fires were set. Officers had to fire tear gas and rubber bullets. At least that's what was said. And so, yeah. In Memphis, protesters marched in peaceful and National Civil Rights Museum.
Hey,
This right here is understandable. Oh, hey Connor, say hey to the people, Connor. We're actually in the middle of the stream right now.
oh hey, buddy. I'm sorry, Devin. I didn't know.
Oh, it's all good. You were supposed to be in here anyway.
So what are we talking about so far?
Right now, I'm going through the list of cities that have had protests or riots, and we're talking about the cities that have had riots and the cities that have had protests.
And we went over the cities where people burn things down.
Yeah.
And where people peacefully protested in.
Yeah. So here's another one. If you're going to protest, use the Memphis model. They peacefully walked to the Museum of Civil Rights. That's okay. Now we're going to get to the heart of this issue. Minneapolis. City authorities and National Guard are trying to rein in the violent protesters after 4 days of demonstration here. Governor Tim Walz has imposed an 8 p.m. curfew for the entire city, and he's constantly pleaded over and over again with demonstrators. Protesters, however, continue.
They need a 3 p.m. curfew.
Protesters continue to set fires, and they continue to loot business, and they shoot at police constantly. So I'm not just going. That's one of the biggest things with me here. I'm not only talking about the bad, I'm also talking about those who are doing things right. Memphis, Flint, New Orleans, good job. Keep it up. And truth and honesty will win the day.
And these dumbass protesters who setting fires and shit and smashing other people's windows, setting trash on fire, just setting everything, just setting a bunch of stuff on fire. When they get done with these policemen, pedestrians in the jumpsuit for the rest of their life, they gonna come after your dumbass. You just setting fire and smashing shit to to property to people who are fucking, they innocent.
And the saddest thing is, I watched another video yesterday. Someone lit a dude's food truck on fire. This is an old black dude.
Up,
old black dude.
Y'all taking money out that man's pocket and food out his kid's mouth, out his family mouth.
It's
all
just
because y'all selfish asses.
It's disgraceful. Now we're going to be talking about New York City. Dozens of people were arrested and several police officers were injured. Thousands of people protested largely peacefully. Of course, they have to say that. In Brooklyn and Manhattan. Of course, the Barclays Center, the police headquarters, police cars were vandalized. Traffic was halted in Lower Manhattan. Imagine New York City with traffic halted.
Oh, Jesus.
Honestly, I would be quite pissed off. I would probably just run over protesters.
Yeah. The thing is, I think the issue with the protesters is it's not that they're peacefully protesting. It's that people who are violently protesting are trying to build a false premise that the police are racist when that's not true at all. There are some cops who are racist, and of course their views are very cancerous. But that doesn't reflect on the views of each individual cop.
So with that, we're going to continue going through the list. We're going to talk about Phoenix next. Hundreds of protesters marched from City Hall to the state capitol. The demonstration turned violent. Seems to be a common theme with a lot of these cities. When they tried unsuccessfully to enter the capitol. The crowd threw bottles and rocks at the police, businesses and vehicles. Windows and police headquarters were also broken, etc., etc. Now, there are way too many places where protests are going on. We've covered some that are bad. We've covered some that were good and did things right. So, yeah, you can see up here what our links were for this. And whenever I click on the page that you go to, you can see the link. If you type it in, you can easily find it. Now we're going to go through and we're going to talk about the people dead.
Jeez, man.
I was asking who was he talking to? You didn't see what he said in the group?
No, I haven't been paying attention. What did he say?
Huh?
Oh.
What was he talking about?
He was talking to me.
Damn it.
Whatever. Anyway, so, he's gone. So, we're going to talk about, we're going to get back into being a little bit serious here. We're going to talk about the amount of people that have died as a result of these protests. We've already talked about Patrick Underwood. Let's say that name one more time. Patrick Underwood. He was a cop he was that cop that died in Oakland. Or in Oakland? Oakland, not Oakland.
Oakland, son.
Oakland. Yeah. So 2 are dead. 2 died, reported from NPR. And this was on the 29th. These were specific to one city. If we continue to go in, 1 dead as Indianapolis shootings begin to rise. It looks like Indianapolis riots have left 2 dead, actually, as Fox News has reported. And let me ask this of all those who say it's completely justified what these people are doing. Based on this data that I've said, 5 people at least, and that's at least, there's plenty more cases than just these, but 5 people at least have died from this. And it's not because of
1,600 people that died from these damn violent protesters.
And
They're not protesting.
Do what?
I said they're not violently protesting.
Then how the hell they die?
They're rioting.
Rioting.
so this is just a taste. All this, and it has nothing to do with police brutality.
No, Ashley, no.
Wait, Kelson, what you gotta say? What are you crying about? No. What you crying
No.
about?
All of these idiots. Just these people just acting stupid.
Oh.
Oh, don't worry about that. We currently doing something that's it's supposed. We doing this by the way to spread love, compassion for our fellow man, for all people. we're going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about something that is very scary.
Excuse me.
Trump was forced to move into a bunker because of attacks on the White House. This was deeply
Why
disheartening.
don't just let Trump own some guns? Oh, when they come, pow, 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 pow.
Well, I'm sure Trump has a gun or two. He also has a Secret Service, but the basically what this is saying is that this in DC is so out of control that they don't trust the Secret Service to be able to defend him.
Yeah, no.
That's crazy. Oh, looks like you're using it. Oh, shut up, CNN. So this is from CNN. So keep in mind, I'm not only using right-wing sources here. I'm using left-wing, I'm using center sources. I don't care your source preference. I'm using all sources here. They defaced. If we go ahead, there are numerous instances of vandalism to sites around the National Mall. National Park Services for the National Mall said in a tweet, with the photos, there were defaced monuments, etc., etc. This is disgraceful. Whenever you are defacing the monuments in Washington, D.C., you are literally writing over history. There's nothing that justifies that.
No.
Now here's that one that I was talking about, and it's disgraceful. And I just want to play a little bit of this video for you guys. I don't know if y'all will be able to hear it, but I want to play it for you.
What?
If y'all didn't hear that, essentially what he said was he's very angry about the death of George Floyd, but he then went on to recount how people set fire to a home, rioters set fire to a home and then blocked firefighters from entering the home to save the child that was in there.
Oh, you talking about the people in Richmond?
Yeah.
Virginia?
Yeah.
Richmond, Virginia?
Yeah.
Richmond, Virginia?
It's that's disgraceful. And again, I'll say this again. For anyone that says that their behavior is justified, this is what I was talking about before. You have a kid in your house. You go off to work. Some protester around 6 decides they don't like your house, so they burn it down. What's up, Chris?
I'm here.
Welcome to the stream.
Daddy is here.
What are you doing? You kissed my arm.
We're actually nearing the end. We're actually on our last bit of the stream, Chris. You kind of missed all of it.
All right.
Yeah, cause I had got off, bro, and then I'm headed to my other job, so I said I was gonna be in on the other call.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, after all the other cops get convicted, we can do like another story on that. You know, sort of. So you'll have other chances. But this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. And it is with a heavy heart that I talk about this. There's a video here, and I was planning on letting all of you watch it, but unfortunately, I had some audio issues, so I'm not going to be able to do that. But you can see it here. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. But, homeless men's belongings are set on fire by rioters. This is again in Austin. That's the homeless man that just fell backwards. As we continue to look at this, there's another man that's stepping on it to try and put the fire out. And the homeless man is going up to the rioters and the cameras, and he's very angry with them. So, for the last thing that we do, I will personally be sending out a prayer, as this is a Christ Healing Ministry live stream. And essentially, what this prayer will be for is for those who are victims of these senseless attacks. Whether it be the police, or whether it be the riots, it's not right either way. Lord, guide these souls. Keep them strong in this time period, Lord. Please aid in expunging the hate and the deception in this world, that you are able to do so in your infinite mercy and wisdom. That you can touch the hearts of humans through us and through our love and our kindness, through all that we do. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Bring us this day our daily bread. Forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. Bring us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
She that fed on love and by and dream.
So, with that being said, I will end it off here by first saying all of these people need our voices. All of the people that are protesting, rightfully so. They need voices like us, because all the media is telling them, and all that's going out there is the violence and the hatred. And it's disgraceful. Any last statements from y'all?
Nope. I mean, it's just gotta come together right now at this time. The violence gotta stop. That ain't gonna do nothing to create more violence.
And people need to learn how to stop spreading ignorance and misinformation and just start looking up stuff for themselves.
Mm-hmm. And this is not a race. It don't matter if you black or white. Right now, we just need everybody need to come together. Yep, I agree.
And people need to stop playing victim too.
Yeah,
Also,
that's true too.
You know what else people need to stop doing?
What else?
People need to stop confusing.
And they need to stop bringing race
Hold on, how
into
you talking
everything.
to me like that? Come on, man. I'll let your monkey ass talk.
Go ahead, bro. Finish.
People need to stop confusing Black history with rioting and protesting. They need to stop confusing that.
Yeah.
Because that's not what that was always about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just put it out there. In my opinion, Black history is part of American history. It's ingrained in what this country is and what we stand for as a united people. It doesn't matter whether it was in the 1860s, whenever slavery was abolished, or whenever it was in the 1960s, whenever Jim Crow was officially abolished and segregation in schools was ended. It does not matter what time in history it is.
That's 9 over there. 5, 6,
7. Deeply ingrained in who we are is both black and white history alike. God bless, and have a great day and a great life. Goodbye.